Nick, first of all, I would like to know a little bit more about Dave, your character.
Right.
What type is he?
Well, I think he's a bit of a rotter, really. You know, he snatches people's girlfriends, but gets away with it, I think, because I think he's quite charming and he, you know...
Self-confident.
Self-confident. And I think he thinks he's a bit of a ladies' man, but I think deep down inside he's very lonely.
Okay, I would actually pick him as being a ladies' man just because of his self-confidence.
Yeah. Well, I think he has that confidence from, you know, being a DJ in a time where he's listened to by 20 million people a day. So if you work the figures, I mean, half of those will be women, half of those will be old enough. And then, you know, so there's probably a pool of 5 million women that would probably sleep with Dave. So it's fairly easy, I think, when you're in that position.
Was he hard to play for you? Because...
Well, I mean, he was and he wasn't. I mean, when I read the script and you see that he's, you know, he gets pulled on the boat at the end by kind of schoolgirls and he has sex with people's girlfriends, and I mean, he's essentially a bit of a bad character. But so you kind of, as an actor, you have to weigh up whether there is enough goodness to counteract his badness, and I think there was.
Is he just a character, or is there a bit of yourself in him?
Yeah, there is a little bit of me in Dave. Probably not the sleeping with Bond girl bit. It's probably the, you know, Dave can be a bit cruel, I think, sometimes, and a bit of a bully, and I think that's probably
but
some of me coming out.
The underdog when it comes to the ladies' man.
Do you think? I think he's the overdog.
Yeah,
I'm not even sure that's a term. Maybe we can have that now between us. But I think, as you said, it's his confidence. You know, I think, I mean, for all bigger men out there, if you're funny and confident, I think it's as attractive as having a six-pack.
I read somewhere that Richard Curtis used iPods for you guys to kind of find out who your character was.
Yeah.
How did that work for you?
It was great. I got a free iPod. But yeah, as soon as we started rehearsals, we all got an iPod with like 300 or 400 different tracks on. And then those tracks were broken down into DJs and what the DJs would listen to. So as a starting point for research, it was invaluable. You know, you could just... I didn't listen to any music post 1969 for the whole time that I was working on this film, which was quite difficult for me, really, because I'm a you know, I like...
If you grew up in a completely different age, I mean, you're 72, so you must have been like, well, you grew up during the 80s then,
yeah,
right? So,
well, I'm a child of the house music revolution. So, you know, even though a lot of people say, well, you weren't there, so how can you put your own feelings into this? But it was a very similar vibe during the house, you know, when kids were going out and listening to house music and kind of sticking two fingers up at the man.
So what about the 60s? What does the time period mean anything to you as such?
Well, I mean, not really. I mean, I think the 60s are romanticized by people who weren't there, basically. I think, you know, the 60s was an amazing time for music and for social growth and for people coming off the back of the Second World War and not wanting to do what their fathers did. But also there was war and revolution, and people had to pay their gas bill, and people had to go to work. So, I mean, it doesn't really mean much to me at all, the 60s. I mean, it's a page in a book, and it's you know, it's an iPod full of good music. That's it. I wish I could.
But do you respect it more after having done a movie like this, where you see that what they had to go through just to get their music through, for instance?
Yeah, well, I mean, even though it was only 40, 50 years ago, it seems like it was 200 years ago, you know. It's BBC Radio played an hour of rock and roll music a week, you know. You think, well, what else were people listening to? And so when someone like Radio Rock comes along, or Radio Caroline as it's based on, and then these people are playing rock and roll music all the time, it must have been, I think it must have been quite exciting if you were 15 or 16 years old in 1966, 67, you know, because you kind of go from listening to your parents' music to seeing Jimi Hendrix smash a guitar up on stage, you know.
You must have had a lot of fun doing this movie.
Yeah, we did. I spoke to Chris O'Dowd yesterday, and he said, I have no recollection of filming in a studio. And it's true, because we had so much fun on location on that ship. And we all lived in little houses in this place called Weymouth in Portland. And we just, we had a great time. I mean, even on set, even working, we had a good time, because we had music playing all the time when we weren't shooting, and we were 10 miles out to sea on this ship making a film. So it was great.